ERC is one of the great triumphs of the European project. I remember more than 10 years ago now, the debates that were going on between scientists in various forms, various organizations, and the European community officials. And they were extremely difficult negotiations. There was a tremendous amount of opposition to having this kind of program supporting science in Europe. The problem was that it was almost the antithesis of the existing European grant support programs, which were based on multinational consortia. They were very, very different from the investigator-initiated primary research projects that the ERC was supporting. And this has been a transformative event in European science, no question about it. Not only because it was, to a considerable extent, new money that was being put into this. I think many countries have come to realize that the ERC method of funding is actually turning out to be more effective than even the individual national funding. So what's so special about them? Firstly, they're worth a great deal of money, and that has a big impact on how importantly they're viewed by the research community. That kind of money, $2.5 million over 5 years for an advanced grant, $1.5 million for a starter grant, these are tremendously large sums of money, and they liberate science. So inevitably there's enormous competition, and what happens as a result of that is that the grants which actually get awarded are very high quality. I see the ERC grants as a kind of a form of paradise that none of us has ever really lived in before, where there is this kind of money available for investigator-initiated research. If speaking for my own Portugal, the reality is that the amount of money available for investigator-initiated for primary science through government sources, despite the best efforts of government ministry, the sums of money are really rather small compared with anything that can be achieved through the European program. Portugal has been extremely successful in the ERC competition. And why is that? It's because 20 years ago or so, Portugal went through a kind of scientific revolution powered by, on the one hand, a very science-oriented government, and on the other hand, by the development of some very original PhD programs which brought out the very best in young Portuguese scientists and internationalized them at the same time. So we've been very successful at the ERC grants, and it represents a level of support for many first-rate institutions in Portugal that would be hard to match in any other way. And in the last funding round, there was an increase in the number of starter grants, though the ratio of starters to finishers, as you might say, has increased. But I think it's very important for the European Union, the ERC in particular, to remember that a person who gets a starter grant now is a person who's going to be bidding for a consolidated grant or an advanced grant next. If the number of consolidator and advanced grants is reduced, then we'll find a significant number of young scientists falling off a precipice, so to speak, from the valuable starter grant back down to the national levels of support. That's hard to budget for, it's hard to plan for, and it's certainly very disappointing for these young scientists in their careers. I would like to see the money more equally distributed between the starter grants and the more advanced grants, because people do become more advanced with age, and it's not good enough just to support a starter. It matters to an institution that it can have these valuable but highly scrutinized high quality in their communities. And from the point of view of the IGC, my own institute, there's no doubt that our position, so to speak, our standing in the community is assisted by having several of these important grants. I believe the ERC program is very special. It's something which is a jewel to be preserved at all costs.